Okay, so hello everyone and welcome to this Improving Your CV webinar session for the Conference of Undergraduate Women in Physics. I'm Heather Pasero, career practitioner at University of Southampton, and although today's session is interactive, please could you switch off your cameras and mute your microphones, and you will be invited to share thoughts and ideas via the chat function, and there will be opportunity at the end of the session to switch your camera and mics on and ask questions in the Q&A section. Okay, so I've tried to shoehorn a little bit of physics into this analogy of the, as you can see, it's a beam pipe, the beam pipes from the Hadron Collider, and many people will try and create a CV from a template, which is a good starting point, but there's so much more to consider once you have the bare bones of your document down. Imagine you're trying to push protons or ions to near the speed of light with a single component of beam pipes and without the other main components of bending magnets, apparently, and accelerating structures. There's so much more you can apply to building your document to ensure it creates the maximum impact at the shortlisting stage of recruitment. So by the end of this session, your takeaway learning should be that you should be able to determine the skills and experience to include on your CV using a job advert. You should be able to demonstrate your skills effectively on your CV, and you should be able to understand how to write your own CV to successfully target a job. Let me just open the chat to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay. So step one. It's vital when mapping your CV to a particular job vacancy that you use the job information on the job advert and to really know what skills, experience and professional attributes the employer is looking for, rather than making a general version of your CV document and going for a one-size-fits-all approach. Using the chat function, can you share why you think that really understanding the skills and professional attributes an employer is looking for is important when approaching your CV? If you really think about why the importance of understanding what the employer is looking for when you compile your CV. Yeah, they need to have all of the information articulated clearly to ensure they have a full understanding of whether you can, whether you have the skills and experience, and whether you will do the job, your motivations and passion and drive. Okay, so we're going to have a look at this job advert here. Okay. What skills is the employer looking for? And you use a chat box to pick out the skills and share with us what you think the employer is looking for. Try and see beyond the obvious and pick out some hidden skills that that will make you stand out from other applicants. And type in the chat box when you think you've identified some of the skills this employer needs the candidate to communicate in order for them to make a shortlisting decision. Of course, as physicists, we've got some coming in, proficient in coding. Okay, keep good time management. Yeah, thinking around the box. These are the hidden employability skills that employers will be really impressed that you've picked out. So good time management for design and set up plasma diagnostics. Yeah, oh, they're coming in thick and fast now. This is fabulous. Working on, sorry, I've just used the wheel by mistake. Let's go back. There you go. You're really going for it with these skills here. Absolutely fantastic. Thinking around the box, creativity. Yeah, they've said somewhere at the bottom, creative. It's another way to say I'm innovative, yeah. And the employers really appreciate that, because what it does, it confirms that you have an understanding of what they're looking for. Let's see what else you've got. Organizational skills, yeah, absolutely. Planning, knowing how to organize projects. Presentation skills. There is hardly a job on this planet nowadays that doesn't require presentation skills, in particular this new way of presenting, these remote presentation skills and communication skills. Yeah, absolutely great. It's about going through in that methodical way. Sometimes you might have a highlighter, you might have a pen to underline those key skills. And then you can also use a thesaurus to find other ways of saying those skills, other words to add texture and make your CV dynamic. So let's have a look. I'm sorry for revealing before. Okay, so yes, you were right. Planning, organisation of design and setup of projects, technical and scientific skills. Of course, you guys are going to be asked, if you stay in this sector, about your technical and scientific skills for every opportunity that you apply for. Research and analytical skills, yeah, that comparing experimental data and that analysis. Motivations, enthusiasm and innovation, what drives you? What is your passion? What makes you tick? In the chat box, we've got a question, unusual question, but would be a skill that is not required. Any skill comes in handy. The skills you're trying to sell are not the skills that come in handy for the role that you're applying to. They're skills that the employer is saying they are looking for. And if you have evidence of that, we're going to be talking about evidence a little bit later, but there needs to be very well articulated and structured evidence. I'll be giving you a technique for that, to ensure that you're telling the story and convincing them that you can do the role. Okay, so we got into logic and problem solving, working under pressure to deadlines. Communication, that can involve emotional intelligence, how you gauge someone, how you gauge your response to make your work with them more effective, dealing with conflicts, conflict resolution, that does happen in the workplace, in every workplace, and empathy. Presentation skills, again, the standard skill for most professions. Nowadays, report writing, team working, project management, prioritizing, and working within company, professional or statutory. I imagine there are lots of statutory best practice and guidelines in your sector, as well as creative thinking. Okay, so there's always opportunities to really shine and ensure that you are selling the deluxe set of skills that other candidates haven't bothered to mine out of the person's specification and job description, and then raid your own skills bank to match up and articulate clearly to help the employer understand that you have the skills and experience and motivation to do the job better than other candidates. Okay, step 2, know yourself. To sell the product that is your employability, you must know that product through and through. A good exercise to fully understand your skills is to create a mind map to raid your skills bank. Pick out example skills from the job description and person specification of the job you are applying for, and think of an example of how you can evidence from your work experience, placement, group work or course modules, or even part-time work or volunteering. By the time you've gone through both documents, you should have a really strong bank of examples of how your skills and experience fit in with what the employer is looking for. And then use keywords to let them know that you have those skills they're looking for. If you include a skill on your CV, be as explicit as possible. Employers won't take their time to work out implied skills. On average, an employer will spend less than 10 seconds on looking at a CV before they decide to put it in the yes, no, or maybe pile. Giving evidence of how you have demonstrated the skills mentioned in your previous situations will make your CV more convincing. So don't just list your skills, give an example to back it up with some detail. I always say it's kind of the I'm fabulous problem. You know, anyone can say I'm fabulous and put that in various different formats, language on a CV, but you need to say how you're fabulous and evidence that. Yeah. Okay. So here's the tried and tested technique. The formula of using an action verb added to an identified skill from the job description or person specification, followed by an example, will ensure that you are convincing the recruiting manager or HR professional looking at your CV that they have that robust set of information in order to make an informed decision of whether to shortlist you or not. So, for example, developed excellent verbal communication skills by clearly presenting research findings to academics and fellow students. It's a really great technique. It ensures that you've got all of the ingredients to articulate the information in the correct order for the panel to get that really deluxe communication, that deluxe set of skills from you that other applicants won't have, hopefully. Okay. So now that you've thought about how you match the skills the employer is looking for, it's time to bring it all together and write your CV. Before you start, here are some key points to remember. Tailor your CV. Don't rely on a generic CV. The employer will see that you haven't bothered to really tune into their requirements, and your document will go in the round file, otherwise known as the bin. And be flexible. Sections on your CV aren't set in stone. So if it suits a particular job, switch them around and split sections up or rename them. And the crucial thing is to keep going back to the job advert. An employer will probably be checking your CV against their criteria and very often scoring as well, or giving a score mapped against the criteria on the job description and the person specification. So keep one step ahead and check you have covered everything. So on the next 4 slides, we have 2 versions of a CV section, and use the chat box to say which you think is most effective and why, and which does not work and why you think that. Okay, so here we go. We'll start off with something simple, the contact details section. Now we've got more information on the top and very streamlined information on the bottom. So which do you think an employer prefers? Which is most useful to the employer? So in the chat, everyone's saying second, option 2, the second. Why the second? Why do they not need to know your date of birth and your nationality? Why? It's not very long ago that students and graduates used to put their postal address. The first one, you might be biased by nationality, gender. Absolutely. You're preventing any discrimination towards you. It's not important for a job. Absolutely. That's the bottom line. It's not important. Option 2, because the other information doesn't have any reflection on how you would perform the job. Absolutely. And all they really need to know is your name, how to contact you. And if you've got a LinkedIn profile and it's polished, pop it there if it's going to enhance your application. Otherwise, all the employer needs is a way to contact you. Well done. Thank you for being interactive. It really helps helps bring these sessions to life. Okay, so this is the personal profile section. We've got the top section, which is written in a very different way than the second option. Someone said in the chat, how often do you think employers bother with LinkedIn? If they're reading your CV electronically, they will click on it. I know I do. There's more information, yeah, so only put it on if it will enhance your application. Someone has said, should we state our name? Yes, your name should be at the top. I'm going to be giving you some resources where there are templates for where your name should be and sizes and that type of thing, okay, and formatting. So don't worry, I won't be just leaving you after this session to wonder. Okay, so who thinks that the option 1 is the better profile and who thinks 2 and why? Or someone saying option 1. Does everyone agree and why? Option 2 uses more keywords. Okay, that's interesting. Option 2 does use more keywords, but is there evidence? Someone said option 1 seems more tailored to the role and gives examples of the skills they are claiming to have. Yes, you're going to use keywords, they need to be linked to the evidence. So if we look at option 1, multilingual final year physics student. Languages is the most, is the skill that employers are least happy with in this country. They really value languages, particularly at this time, and they're unhappy with that. If you have got more than one language, put it as the first thing they'll read on your CV because it will enhance your employability immediately. Final year physics student with a love of designing, setting up and running experiments, proven ability in making sense of simulations through data analysis. Yeah, so you've got the skill and the evidence. My work experience as a school lab technician helped me develop skills such as problem solving, yeah, the skill and the evidence. And my lifelong interest in space makes this the perfect opportunity for me in this groundbreaking graduate role. The passion, the motivation, and a little bit of a story about drive. Yes, it's option 1. That is, option 2 seems like a biography. I agree. It's a little bit too narrative. It's too much of a story rather than having that solid examples in there. Okay. The education section, where you guys are up to now. So we've got, in both, we've got where, what, and when student is studying. And we've got relevant modules, which is really key to the kind of roles you would be applying to. You can't list all your modules, of course, but relevant is really gives an idea of where you're up to in terms of your learning and study. And we've got a question in the chat. Should the CV change according to the country? Yes, the advice I give is for UK. In Europe, there is general advice, but there are differences in different countries. In Europe, very often a photo is used. We don't really advise that for the reasons we were talking about before, to do with the information they need and the risk of discrimination or unconscious bias. And even the word changes. In America, the document is called a resume. So although some of this advice is relevant and useful for all CVs, the formatting in particular is UK only. Okay, in Poland, for example, we were expected to put a photo. Yes, a lot of the Eastern European countries in particular use a photo. We're looking at education option 1 and option 2, and option 1 has clear examples to back up the skills mentioned: conducting experiments, analysing and reporting results, for example, on motion and relativity. Yeah, we've got the skill, we've got the example there. Enhanced communication skills and team working ability through group projects and presentation. It puts that skill into context. If you look at the bottom example, option 2, it's a list of things, stuff that people are good at, communication skills, team working. It gives no evidence that this person has these skills, just that they know that they're needed for the role. Okay, so it needs to be more robust. Okay, and work experience. So we've got, again, a narrative, a long paragraph of text at the top, and we've got some bullet pointed evidence at the bottom, explanation of what was involved in this role and the skills that the person used. Option 2 lists the skills, but doesn't, oh, sorry, I think we're on the, this is for this one, is it? Oh, sorry, we've got another question. I knew the context action result method for bullet points, but what is your opinion on it? The context, the CAR technique, or we call it STAR technique, what was the situation, what was the task, what was the action, what were the results, kind of belongs at interview. It's a really good way of telling that story. The technique I showed you to do with the verb, the skill and the evidence is just a little bit pared down and more suited to written applications than interviews. I hope that helps. The STAR and the CAR technique do actually work quite well in the covering letter, but you can find information about this if you just Google interviews or applications, CAR and STAR technique. You can find out more about it. But yeah, they're very useful, particularly for interviews. Okay, right, great. Option 2 is more specific, yes, and clearer. It's easy. The recruiting manager needs to pick out that information really easily. Yeah, option 2 is clear and concise and puts those skills into context. Prepared equipment and chemicals before lessons, from test tubes to state-of-the-art microscopes. We get a really whole idea of what that person was doing there. Maintain and repaired equipment and laboratory apparatus, often with no manuals. So you kind of squeezed in some skills there with them using on initiative, recording data for students' practical sessions, tracking methods and results, attention to detail, systems, etc. So that's really good. Again, thank you for taking part. So when you write your own CV, repeat the steps we've gone through today. Check the advert, think of examples to match your skills, and see if there is a relevant job profile on Prospects. Prospects is the undergraduate careers website. It's got some fabulous information on CVs there, but it's also got some job profiles. So it's got research scientists, physicists, and related occupations. And there, as well as having entry requirements, progression once in a role, salary scales, it's also got skills needed. So you can kind of look at those skills, and if the job description isn't very, very extensive, have a look and add some extra skills into your CV and evidence them as I explained. And order the skills by relevance. So they're kind of getting those really crucial, vital skills that they're asking for further up the document. And repeat this for every job you apply for to ensure that you are matching the job requirements as effectively as possible. There are many ways that students do this. Sometimes they use a grid and kind of, as they've picked out or highlighted the skill, they'll get an example, think of a past scenario, and then write about the scenario using the technique I gave you, the action verb, the skill, the evidence. And then for each job, then you've got a menu of skills and you can mix and match and pick and mix. Otherwise, you're kind of starting your CV from scratch each time, which is obviously not time efficient, but also really, really unnecessary. And some students prefer a mind map, you know, to kind of kind of generate some ideas of past scenarios. And yeah, so make sure you're doing that to make sure you've got that bank of skills evidence for each job you apply for. So you should now be able to determine the skills and experiences to include on your CV using a job advert. You should be able to demonstrate your skills effectively on your CV and understand how to write your own CV to successfully target a job. And don't forget all of those fantastic resources at Prospects to support you with CV templates, formatting, etc. I was asked to kind of touch upon academic CVs today. I understand that you are all undergraduates, but at some point, some of you will be compiling an academic CV. And an academic CV focuses on academic achievements, research interests, and specialist skills. And this type of CV is used when applying for lecturing or research roles. And again, there's some great information and templates on academic CVs on Prospects, but the fantastic resource for PGR applicants and students is vitae.ac.uk, and that's got a really rich resource of how to write an academic CV there at Vitae. So there is some, oh, sorry, some questions coming in. Is work experience non-related to the job I'm applying to worth mentioning? So yes, absolutely. I was talking earlier in the earlier session I did today that even part-time jobs that you've had at university or being part of a society committee or volunteering, you can mine some really good skills out of them. If you imagine if you worked at Costa, it's a global organisation, there's company guidelines, company policy, dealing with difficult situations, communication. Yeah, there's so much that you can bring to life in your CV. If you've been on a committee as treasurer, you've got attention to detail, accuracy, that type of thing, working as part of a team. Absolutely, employers really love to hear about all of the other non-science related stuff you've been up to and what you've learned from that and how you use it. Right, we've got lots of questions. How can we make sure it fits into 2 pages if we have to be so specific? I struggle a lot with this. It's a conundrum. It's really difficult because there's some really harsh decisions that have to be made about things you're being told you should shout about, you should be bragging about, you should be selling your skills. Particularly as women, we need to be kind of really shouting about all these technical and scientific skills, but we've only got 2 pages. The bad news is that if you're applying for some of the big organizations, they ask for 1 page nowadays, which is ridiculous, but they're just getting so many applications. Just make sure if you're asked to, if you're applying to any of the graduate schemes and they're asking for a 1-page CV, tends to be those companies who who are asking for that. Make sure you see your careers advisor or contact your careers service to find out about how you can fit all of that onto 1 page. And as well, Prospects as well has a good section on that. And yes, I'm afraid the standard is 2 pages. Everybody struggles with it. It's a case of rejigging, making really difficult decisions, but it can be done. And employers do not want to see 3 pages. Yeah, it will go in the round file. All right, what about writing without bullet points, but for example, making keywords bold? Would that be okay? No, it's not a good idea because it's kind of, it's almost saying to the reader that you don't know where to look, so I'm showing you, and that isn't the dynamic you want in a CV. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Could you link us to a CV example? Yeah, you'll get this PowerPoint afterwards. Andy who's coordinating this, has already asked me to send it over. And if you go on the prospects resources, you'll be able to find some fantastic examples there. Okay, let's go back to this. So yes, there is some research that reports women scientists as underselling their skills due to being more naturally modest, or our culture as women and in society. And hopefully things are changing. In particular, the influence of successful female mentors in science can create templates for understanding how to talk about your strengths, skills, and your career journey as scientists. So I need to do a stop share and then a reshare for this. So I'm so sorry, because I need to share the sound. So share computer sound. I'm not sure that's worked. Oh, we're on the wrong screen. Apologies. Okay. Do you want to type in the chat box if you can see the Space Scientist page? I'm afraid this is only available to University of Southampton students. This is Dr. Maggie Aderen-Pocock speaking brilliantly about her career journey and achievements. Someone could just type yes if they can see that, hopefully. And fabulous, but I'm sure she's worth researching because I found this really fantastic video, so I'll play it now.
So my name is Dr. Maggie Aderen-Pocock, and I'm a space scientist and a science communicator. With space scientists, I actually build satellites that go up in space. And science communicator, I like to try and translate some of the complexity of science into a simple format for everybody to understand. It was a job that I've always wanted, really. Since I was a child of the age of 6, I've wanted to get out into space. And it's getting sort of harder and harder to envisage me getting out there, but I feel I'm doing the next best thing, and I'm building instrumentation that goes out into space. My PhD was in mechanical engineering, but before that I did my degree, which was in physics. And so that was quite an interesting hybrid for me, because doing the physics and the mechanical engineering turned out to be a perfect marriage for making satellites in the future. The first sort of instrumentation I was working on was something called a missile warning system. And this was sort of quite a complex piece of equipment. But what it was designed to do was warn pilots when a missile was coming, and then automatically let off flares to protect the pilot and the aircraft. Parents broke up when I was quite young. And so my mother had custody of me, and sometimes my father had custody of me. And as a result, I was transferred across the country a lot. So it was an interesting education system. When I was in primary and secondary education for a long time, I wasn't considered to be very bright. And so it was always a disappointment for me, because when I was a child, I got really hooked on space. And I told my school teachers, yeah, I want to be an astronaut, I want to go into space. And they sort of looked at me a little sadly and said, well, Maggie, you suffer from dyslexia. You're probably not going to be very academic at all. And so that was always a disappointment. But my father was wonderful, and he told me that if you really work hard, you know, the sky's your limit. Because my English and my sort of spelling wasn't very good, it meant I focused on the science subjects, and I found that I was quite logical and things like that. So I admired people like Spock on Star Trek. And so by using those skills, I was able to develop sort of techniques to cope with the dyslexia and sort of move on through my career. The science communication is a recent manifestation for me, because I have a team of scientists and engineers working for me, and I've been trying to recruit people. And about 4 years ago, I realised that I'm trying to recruit people, but I can't find people to join my team, people with the right skills. And my husband is also an engineer, and we met during our PhDs, and would go home and say, yes, you can't recruit people either, what's going on? And we suddenly realised, well, if we can't recruit people, we have jobs that we really love and enjoy, but are we telling anybody else about those jobs? So we decided that we need to get out there and encourage more people to join us. As a scientist and an engineer, I've travelled across the globe and seen some fantastic things, worked on sort of telescopes on mountains where the stars make my heart sing to see them. And so I go to schools across the country and tell kids, this was my progression. Also, often when kids hear about scientists and engineers, they think, as I say, you need the brain the size of a small planet to be a scientist or an engineer. So I like to point out that I was a dyslexic kid. I was in remedial classes, in some of my schools, and I went to sort of, I think, 13 different schools when I was growing up. But that shouldn't stop you. If you have a passion for something or an interest in something, that is the criteria, and that's what can drive you on. I really love being a scientist and an engineer. We take on some of the biggest challenges of the world. Much of the work I'm doing at the moment is associated with climate change and trying to understand how our climate is changing and viewing that from space. To be part of a team that is involved in that, to me, is fantastic. I'm doing a project with Blue Peter at the moment, where I've given Blue Peter a satellite and we're going to launch it into space, and kids will get an image coming from the Blue Peter 1 satellite every week. And it took a long time to set that project up, but I did it in my spare time. But because it's so much fun, and I got a Blue Peter badge and I'm working with Blue Peter and I've been on the programme now, because it's so much fun, it doesn't really feel like work.
Okay, and we do have another another video from someone who apparently Andy, who's moderating this session today, was already familiar with, which is really interesting. This is a video from Mary Gillard discussing her experiences in a male-dominated field. I'll just position screen share again. Apologies, I need to share the sound also.
I guess I'll get started.
I'm sorry, that's not our link. There we go.
Once I had decided that I was probably going to write a book, I spent some time thinking about the title. And then all of a sudden, incident came to me, something that happened when I was in high school. I was walking home from school and I ran into a neighbor boy who maybe asked me what I wanted to do, and maybe I just said I was interested in doing physics, and he said, a singularly unfeminine profession. And that stuck to me, with me, because it was unique for that time in my life. My childhood experiences were generally pretty positive, and that was the first indication that I heard that a woman had no business doing physics. My work was highly cited. I was doing very well, but there was not a question for them to hire a woman, and they just kept hiring other people. And initially, I thought it was because those people were all better than me, and better than I was, and then I eventually came to think that wasn't really the case, and there was anti-feminism. When I was a summer student at Brookhaven, everybody got excited because a scanner, who's somebody who looks at pictures taken by apparatus, I reported an event that had never been seen before. And I wasn't educated enough to know what the excitement was about, but I sure understood the excitement. And I wanted to be part of that. And I wanted to learn. I wanted to know enough so that I would understand why this was exciting. There was a time in my life where I was being a mother and cooking dinner and washing and doing physics and not much else. But it had never occurred to me to give up. I just was something I loved. I think it's pretty well established now that girls are not inherently different than boys in terms of math ability. And the differences, I think, have to do with how they're taught, the social atmosphere. We still need to let women know that they can do physics and get them interested, have them take more math in high school so they'll be prepared when they get to college. I came to Berkeley in 1981, and I was really received warmly by the department. I mean, I felt wanted, and that was a whole lot different from what I'd been feeling at CERN, and so it was great. And I mean, every now and then I might run into some little minor incident of anti-feminism, but it was so minimal compared to what I experienced, and the overall welcome that I got here and the way I was treated and respected was just a huge, it was night and day. There's a big advantage to coming to the United States beyond anything else, which is you get to work as long as you want.
Fantastic. I think it's really important to kind of end this session seeing women talking about their own skills and their own career journey, because so much of what we see relate to is a men's narrative of being a scientist, and the more you are exposed to as women, to more women scientists, the more confidently you'll be able to sell your own skills. Okay, so I'm going to hang around here for a while and ask some questions, answer some questions. You're going to ask the questions. You can feel free to switch your mic or camera on and ask me a question. I'm happy to stick around, and it can be anything career related, to do with interviews or finding opportunities or career planning. I'll stick around for a while.
Hi, so I had a question about skills and examples. So does it get boring for an employer to read a CV where there are lots of examples linked to maybe 2 or 3 experiences?
No.
Does it get monotonous?
No, I'm sorry. What's your name?
Alice?
Oh, I can't find you. Oh, sorry. Well, Alice, no, it doesn't get boring, because what that does, it brings to life the skill and the experience. It's boring if it's just a list of skills that aren't related to you. They want to know about you. So when you're talking about teamwork, they want to know your role in that team. Where do you naturally sit? What did you do? What actions did you take? It's not boring. It's much more exciting. I mean, CVs, they're not the most, they're quite, it's not something that is fascinating, isn't it? However, if you've got a problem and you're an employer, and don't forget, they've got a problem to solve. They need to find someone for that job. So they're going to be looking at these documents in a really excited way, especially if you could bring your skills to life and think, oh, hey, we might have found this person here. Okay. So no, it doesn't get boring. What is boring is just lists of good stuff that people do, not specific to you. Okay. No, it doesn't get boring. Okay.
Thanks.
Any tips for applying for a PhD? Yes. Use Vitae. It's a fantastic resource. It's got, I think you can even do some kind of guidance through them as well. They're just such an amazing resource for if you're thinking about PGR. Also, your career service will have a doctoral college advisor allocated to it. If you're University of Southampton student, it is Vicky Shawley, she's our career practitioner to support those in the doctoral college. However, for science, for your program, if you're thinking of applying to postgrad, it is Andy Gardner. How important are university grades when applying to a job? Is it necessary to include in your CV? Well, if you're applying to some of the graduate schemes who sometimes ask for a 2-1 or above, yes, of course. If you've got a first, always put it. Yeah, if they're asking for educated to degree level, then you can put it. I suppose the question is, if you've got a 2-2 and they've not asked specifically what your classification is, would you leave it off? I suppose I would say yes. However, a 2-2 is nothing to be ashamed of, and you have a degree. A lot of the graduate schemes now are taking 2-2s, so it's not the end of the world if you're thinking about a graduate scheme, or even for some SMEs, small to medium-sized enterprise, you know, the university startups, spin-offs, science-based SMEs, yeah, would also be asking perhaps for a certain classification, if but unless they specifically ask, then I would leave it off. Okay. Could you put a link for the PhD website? It is on the slides and you will get them next week, I believe. It's called vitae.ac.uk, vitae.ac.uk. If a job application asks for an interest or hobby section on CV or application, do these need to be things which show skills or relevant experience? I wondered whether to include this today, but I suppose I was thinking more about really focusing on women selling their science skills, and women, not particularly science skills, but women scientists selling their skills. Hobbies and interests section, I'm a really big fan of them, because what it does, it shows employers, potential employers, what you do outside work and learning and work, and what kind of person you are. Again, it kind of brings to life you as an individual, you know. So again, a list of stuff is unhelpful. You know, I spent years telling people to take watching TV off their hobbies and interests section, and then one day someone wrote, I'm really into Breaking Bad, I've joined the Society for American Serial Dramas, and we've booked to go to a conference in America for Breaking Bad, where we'll meet other enthusiasts. So, you know, if it's interesting, if there's a story, and it doesn't have to be as elaborate as that, but if you play squash, are you part of a team? Have you been in a tournament? Yeah. If you cook, is there any particular cuisine you're interested in? Yeah. If you read authors, cinema, genres, directors, yeah, be specific, just like the rest of a CV. Okay, do grades weigh more than experience? That's up to the employer. It's not for me to say. As I said, that there is definitely criteria for some of the graduate schemes, 2-1 or above. A lot of them are taking 2-2s. SMEs can set their own criteria. I think there's also a lot to be said for it. Depends who you're against on the day, if you are shortlisted, in terms of who gets the job, and also who else is submitting the CV. I cannot speak for employers, but I think about things you're not in control of are who you're up against and the type of experience that you've got, yeah, against the grades you've got. If you've got really great grades and really great work experience, but one of the two is higher or lower than the other, you've got to really kind of upsell your skills, or, as you say, grades, perhaps leave it off if it's not ideal. Thank you, vitae.ac.uk. Makes sense. Okay. So do you think it is better to go for some template with colours to make it stand out, or to keep it clean and simple? If it's done correct, if it's done well, it can really work. If students go over the top, it can look a little bit out of place. I would say look at the employer website and see how traditional, how really fashionable, how clean, or how busy their websites are. And I wouldn't, if it's a really traditional employer, I would, you know, not go any further than a blue line here or there, you know. But it's, to be honest, it's much more important for the creative subjects who are expected to deliver content in that kind of way. With you guys, I would say that not using colour or fancy formatting is not a problem. Sorry if this isn't relevant to CV writing specifically. I find I'm quite slow at assessment centre tests. What can I do to better prepare for these? Practice, practice, practice. Everyone is really bad at assessment centre tests to start with, and then you'll just get to a point where you start thinking, hey, I'm killing this now. This is really picking up. Okay, if you are a student at our university, you can log into our careers hub. If you go to the main careers website, and you can do some practice tests. If you're not at our institution, if you contact your career service and ask if they buy a subscription to the practice tests, as we do. Practice is the key. Unrelated to CVs, but what advice would you give about academic interviews? Again, practice and prepare. As in CV writing applications, you need to think about what questions you're going to be asked in advance, and then practice. Book an appointment with a career practitioner and get some feedback. And if you're a University of Southampton student, we do have a AI 360 mock interview tool. If you log into the Careers Hub on our main website, you may have something similar in your career services, so you can ask that. Otherwise, you can record yourself and give ask your friends, family, or give yourself feedback, but practice with a career practitioner. What do you suggest if you have exceptional circumstances? Also in regards to having a disability, does this put you generally at a disadvantage, as employers would have to make adjustments? I'm not aware of your particular situation, and so I couldn't say, but some employers operate on the 2-tick system. I think it's called disability competent now, where if you tick on the application, you'll get a guaranteed interview. And of course, there are laws against discriminating against any protected characteristics. And I would hope that you are applying to an employer who abides by the law. If you have any concerns, book an appointment with your career practitioner who is linked to your enabling or disability department. If you're at University of Southampton, that's Julie Parfitt, and she can advise you on any specific issues that you're worried about. Is there any way we can find practice psychometric tests? As I say, on our careers hub, we pay a subscription for some, and hopefully your career service will do too if you look at their careers website. Unrelated, can I ask how to manage your study or work with your life? Like how you know that you did your best? Managing your work-life balance is a big issue, particularly at the moment. Everyone's working from home. Again, if you're a university, I'm sorry to say this, but if you're a University of Southampton student, we have some great resources on work-life balance. We have some programs and courses that you can work through to kind of build your work-life balance skill set, and contact your career service. Hopefully they will have something similar to support you to build those skills. I think using Outlook Express is absolutely essential, using your calendar to plan your time and knowing your limits, taking regular breaks. Make sure you're not working beyond your contracted time. I originally did AS levels in some art subjects and didn't get good grades. Should I leave these out of a CV, or is it better to include them so there isn't a gap in the education sector? Well, it sounds like you've got quite an interesting story, and I think we shouldn't have to explain our unusual journey to where we got. There's a story to be told, and I think that I think I said in the previous session that a linear line from studies of school, sixth form, university, postgrad, graduate scheme, or PhD isn't necessarily the route for everybody nowadays. So I would just kind of tell the story, and if you've got some creative skills, you could relate it to those disciplines that you did at AS level as well. In an interview, if the employer asks if I have any questions, do you have any suggested questions that I can ask that may help me get the job? You need to think of some questions that are genuine questions before your interview. The good thing is we've been interviewed remotely at the moment, is that we can pop some questions above our PC. In face-to-face interviews, when I was being interviewed, I used to have a little list in my suit pocket, because during the course of the interview, whatever, if you've got one or two questions, chances are they will have been covered in the course of the interview. So if you've got a bank of questions that you can fall back on, you'll know you'll have fresh questions rather than going over things that have already been discussed in the interview. But things like reference to particular projects or the culture of the organisation are really kind of good to kind of show that you are interested in working for them. But you do have to think of your own questions. Okay. If we went to school outside of the UK, would you translate school name or leave it in the original form? So, for example, like a high school number. Yeah, absolutely. I think it just needs to be kind of, that's the type of thing that needs to be explained and, you know, not excused, just explained. So, for example, if you went to a particular school that was a secondary school, but there's a different name for it, you need to put in brackets equivalent to secondary level education, yeah, just so the reader knows exactly what that part of your education was. And any high school number, it will be a waste of the white paper, yeah, you just need to, okay, yeah, I can see you said thank you there. So how can I really sell a career change on my CV and in interviews from the arts into physics? I think that's a really great way to look at it. And I think that employers see it that way as well. A journey from the arts to fit into physics. Imagine all the other people who have applied for that job who don't have that interesting journey to talk about. I think you can kind of talk about the turning point, the trigger that made you decide. I'm sure you can remember that now as I'm speaking, how it made you feel, the actions you took after that, how it's changed your life and what you can bring from your past life, so to speak, into your current practices. It sounds like an exciting journey. How can I really sell a career? Oh, sorry. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's it. I just want to say thank you for being an absolutely brilliant group, being so interactive. It says, is there any way we can contact you? University of Students, Southampton students can contact me via the careers service. Anyone here can contact me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn is on the cover slide that you will be given. I won't be able to offer you a careers practitioner service, but your own institution will have your own link practitioner to physics. Oh, well, thank you for saying this was useful in the chat. I've really enjoyed the 2 sessions today, and I really believe in supporting women in physics and kind of getting that new narrative out there. Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.